Okay, everybody, I'm gonna give a do this video on the SpeechDATCar project, which was done in the late 1990s to early 2000s. It was co-funded by the European Commission um, under, I think it was, I can't remember, it was the fourth or fifth framework program. Okay, it was during that fourth and fifth. I can't, probably the fourth, end of the fourth, maybe the beginning of the fifth. Okay, I mean, I'd have to go back and actually look at the stuff. It would be saying it in any of the. There are lots of publications on this, quite a few. There's actually a whole web page about it too, um, called SpeechDATCar. Um, and there was SpeechDAT and there's SpeechDATCar. SpeechDAT was in like studio apartments with refrigerators and stuff, kind of thinking about the Internet of Things. We didn't call it that back then, but that's what it was focusing on. And then Speech.car was doing it in recording environments within vehicles, driving and parked. Um, so I'm going to summarize the articles here. I mean, there are lots of articles. I co-authored one of them because I was brought in when I started working at Elda and Elra as the CTO, direct technical director. I was handling all the stuff, all the technical side stuff, and a lot of marketing and other analysis stuff too. But when I came in, we were working partners, and we were kind of creating databases and stuff. And so we were subcontracting out databases. We were doing calls for proposals for others. We were co-funding the stuff that we're getting money from your commission to actually get funding that we would co-fund again ourselves with other things that we are selecting proposals and all that, and then creating the databases. They create the database. We'd have it validated. We kind of manage the whole thing, and then in some cases, we were involved in the actual production of the databases, which was my case. And at least the speech.car. Okay. I did participate in the French SpeechDATCar as watching how their people did it, because I had experience doing this, but on previous projects, but not in the car, but in different previous projects. So this was nothing new. And then I spent a lot of time with the French teams, um, who were doing the French recordings about how they're doing it, because I had to understand how the setup was and stuff so that I could actually replicate that for the project in the United States, which I set up the whole thing. And then I subcontracted the actual recording activity to another institute there, because I couldn't go there. And I was living in Europe again. I just moved to Europe. I was going to go back and spend 2 years doing recordings in the States. So I subcontracted the actual recording tasks to the Oregon Graduate Institute, or they changed names a couple times, but the Oregon Graduate, folks that in the Center for Speech Language Understanding or whatever it was. So so I did all the specs and stuff for the English version, the American English version, but I was participating and working with the French recording project. There were 9 languages off the top of my head in Europe that were co-funded for the European Commission, and the one for America was, we had a sponsor basically, and then we kind of co-funded that with Elda. So I actually don't have any articles that I wrote about it, because I had left Elda and Elra just at the time when we were getting to start the recording. So I should have actually done all this before I left, but I mean, you can't do it. So I'm going to talk about it now, but I'm going to explain the whole thing. And actually, it was the team there at Oregon Graduate Institute that, well, back then it's called OGI, but I think it's called Oregon Health Sciences University now. That's what they call it, but it's based out in Beaverton, Oregon. And they did some papers that explain how they specifically did, and they had to modify a few things because of the radio frequencies, the phones, the telecom system, all that. But the so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about here the kind of the generic stuff that I want to go through, and I just want to mention some of the things that were kind of key in that project, because you can go read the papers. I mean, the papers explain everything because they're all reviewed, right? But I just want to give you an overview of it so you get an understanding. So it was done in the recordings that I said were done in different environments. They were done in. So I just want to say this again because I think I mentioned in another video, but the recordings for the cars were done in different driving environments. For SpeechDATCar, they were done in parked, in traffic, slow traffic, in kind of normal, little low town speed, then highway speed. So we'll say 50 kilometers an hour, and then 90 kilometers an hour, and then 120 kilometers an hour. Let's kind of say these different kind of speeds, right? Then you can do it with the windows open. So the windows down, the windows up, no other sounds. With the sunroof, I don't think I had a sunroof, but equivalent windows down or sunroof have kind of the same problem, right? Same sounds. Then you have the air conditioning on. You could have the radio on. I can't remember if we had the radio on or off, but it kind of gives you these different environments. So the sound in the vehicle is going to do it. All the recordings in each language are done in the same vehicle, right? So consistent sound. They had microphones arrays that were up. They had microphone arrays. The arrays were on the sun visor, and so the microphones there would be at least 3 recordings off the top of my head. We did it, and you'd have 2 of them that would go off to 2 GSM or phones, mobile phones. Back then it's GSM. It's kind of just audio only, right? No video stuff, no. And so the audio channels, dedicated audio channel, right? And then you have 2 microphones that would go off and send signals. They were hooked up to phones that would send the signals and be saved on computers at the center, at where they have get the computers, right? Then they had another 1 or 2 microphones that would send it to computers that were actually in the car. So it wouldn't be going over a phone line, it'd be going through an actual cable that goes to the back of the car where you have the computer, right? So it's actually recording this stuff in the computer. So you have backups of everything, right? But that's a better signal than the one actually going to the phone, right? But we're doing the one over the phone, so you could get the interference of the actual driving, right? So this is so because that's when you're doing these recordings, they're for people who are driving in cars. So you're trying to kind of replicate the exact same conditions that you're going to get when you're driving, right? So that's just that's the environments you're actually recording in. Then you have a screen or 2 screens that were on the dashboard of the guitar, a car. I'm sorry, I gotta say guitar. I say guitar too much because I play guitar. And they had to be positioned right. Getting the insurance companies to actually insure these cars is a difficult thing. It's a really tough thing to do. That was fun. So they didn't want to have car wrecks, right? People spend on, and we'd have words. They were one words. They weren't like long phrases. They were one word things that were coming up. So it's very, very word specific. I don't want to say words, but items. Okay. They weren't full phrases. I think there were a few full phrases, but they weren't. That wasn't the focus of it, right? The specs for all these things were based on. They were based on. We had a template of all the different kinds of categories of words, and I want to be careful to say them words, but I'm going to call them words, okay? That you wanted to use. Place names like towns. Each country had all its main cities, so that you'd always start with all the main cities of. But all these individual European countries is kind of easy, right? But the U.S., you got to choose, well, out of all the cities in all the U.S., which are the ones you want to focus on? You had a limited amount of those you want to put in, right? It's all variable, but you want a limited amount because you had a certain amount of words you got to spread out this whole thing to have people to pronounce, right? And not everybody's going to pronounce everything, right? So you got to split this up. It's going to be random, so it's going to be randomly and generated when you have each person doing it. So they're not all doing everything, right? Each person is going to be a set driving time to actually participate in the project. And they get some money out of it or get a free voucher for something to get them incentive to participate. And so we had place names. So place names, big cities, people's names, common people's names, PIN numbers, so numbers of your credit card numbers. So just 4 sets of 4 digits, lots of those. We had nonsense words, so completely nonsensical words, but you can actually pronounce it, right? So Smurf would be a good example of it, right? But you can think about wug. In linguistics, you use the word wug. Smurf is a good kind of generic thing. But those are kind of examples. But imagine if you kind of made up other words, right? And you just the combination of letters. Think about playing Scrabble. When you play Scrabble and you kind of put the words together that don't exist, that's what you do. We had a few of those. Okay, think of that. Then talk about, and there are categories of words. And we talked about those in the papers. We mentioned the types of things, but that's kind of stuff it was, right? So, and you display these words up. The person does the recording, it says it, and then you go to the next one, and you go to the next one, and you go to the next one. It saves each one of these to the file. I can't remember if it saved it as a full long file or if it separated them out. I can't remember if we actually um, recorded them one by one. I actually did not do the recordings of the one in the U.S. I only participated in watching how the peoples were doing in the French ones, but I can't remember the actual recording thing. Because I wasn't doing that part of it, right? I was doing the upfront stuff for that project, The and then you had, kind of different driving conditions, as I said, and all kinds of things. And the goal of it was to collect 50% male, 50% female in general, different age groups. So you got to mark down the age groups and all those different things. Basically all the sociolinguistic annotated information about about each person minimum, and you do about 30 minutes of driving, 30 minutes of driving and speaking, but speaking one word at a time, right? As you're driving in a certain condition, and you got to have it all in the same condition, right? So if you're driving in traffic, got to be in traffic all the time. If you got a highway, you got to get them on the highway and then start doing the recording, right? Park, that's kind of easy. And then the whole goal was to have this huge database of and then we had different independent institutes actually validating these and cleaning them up. And then the whole goal was to sell the database through ELDA for each of the languages, to sell them to kind of like telephone operators, who would then build the systems to be able to have it. So you get to have to talk on your, when you're talking on your phone. Today, it's understanding you in your car environment. That was kind of the goal. So that's kind of a summary of the SpeechDATCar project. I mean, you can go read more in all the papers and stuff, but that'll kind of explain the whole thing to you and kind of get the idea of how it was, right? So that was my experience in that. And I know that the U.S. project took a long time to do, and they had a paper just on that. That kind of going through. They talked about all the different conditions we dealt with after, because it wasn't same as the U.S. As Europe, especially the phone frequencies. I knew this. I knew that we're going to have a difference because the phone frequencies here in Europe, they're 900 and 1800, right? But over in the U.S. it was 1900. So you had all these different frequencies you got to deal with, and I dealt with that after, because actually, after I left. I realized this even more after I left Elva and Eller, and I went to Sotissimo, and then I went to MyCom. I spent 5 years working on wireless telecom, so I totally understood this after having worked on the SpeechDATCar project. And when I went to MyCom, I was able to do really well with MyCom because I'd be talking about these 2G, 3G kind of systems and stuff, and the networks and all that. But yeah, so that's kind of the whole SpeechDATCar project. Explains that, and hopefully you get enough out of that to understand. And then we had to deal with all kinds of interesting phonetic and phonological things because of the way the people were saying things in different environments, because they had to say things fast, right? And these are all fast, short words, right? Short words have different things. If you're putting when you're doing short words, you're not getting phonological, what we call liaisons between different words, right? When you're doing this, so you're not getting that stuff, which you'll get if you get full sentences or utterances, right? You're going to get different phonological groups here. Where you're saying individual words, you're going to get the kind of the pure prototype semantic sounds, right? Because you're saying a single word. But when you're beginning to put those in context with other words, that's where they start changing the sounds between the boundaries, the boundaries, the borders of the words. And this is where we get into phonology. But we weren't dealing with too much I'm going to call this it's interword, but intra utterance, within the utterance phonology. You weren't getting that because of their individual words. So that's a limitation of the project. It wasn't getting on the utterance level, okay, of the phonology within the whole full sentence or full utterance, which you would get in a lot of natural speech. So it had limitations. But that's everything about that project. And then go on to the next videos about the other projects and other things for this topic.